Check it out.
Hello.
Hey, Taylor. How are you, girl?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. You know, just trying to live the dream and kill the game every day.
Yeah, I feel that.
How's been training your classes going?
It's been going really well. I actually just took a week off, though, from training to go on a little vacation.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Where'd you go?
I went out to Breckenridge, actually, to do some camping out in the mountains. It was pretty spectacular, kind of cold.
I mean, Breck is
already
beautiful. Yeah, Breck is very beautiful. That's awesome. That's awesome. What was the best part about your trip?
Probably just getting to disconnect from the world for a little while and, really enjoy my surroundings and just be one with nature, a little too one with nature. My tent kind of gave out at the very end there. We went to the primitive campgrounds and it got a little sketchy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've definitely had that happen before. Bad tents and bad camping gear makes for an epic trip. No bueno sometimes, but definitely an epic trip. Oh.
Yeah. And it was good timing because it was there at the very end, but I'm definitely going to have to do some replacing in some of my gear. I know you are into that kind of stuff, right? Like, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Nemo. They kind of came on the scene a little while ago, and they've been around for a while, but their tents are awesome. And it's funny enough, the owner of the company had an experience much like you, and it just failed him, and he was infuriated with it. And then he set out to create amazing, amazing products. And if you're going to be doing like a lot of backpacking, they make an Aurora that is really good. But I would definitely check them out. And if you decide to purchase anything from them, if you use the promo code Sends and Suffers 20, you get 20% off. You help the podcast.
Okay. I'm sold. I'm definitely checking this out.
All right. Well, hey, I look forward to seeing you in the gym later on this week. And I'm still excited. I'm going to try to catch one of your fitness classes, but I got to jump off here. But it's good catching up with you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Sounds great. I'll see you later.
Friends and enemies, lovers and haters, welcome to Sends and Suffers podcast. I am your host, Mario Stanley. If you're enjoying Sends and Suffers podcast, please like, follow, and subscribe on all our social media platforms and on whatever platform that you're listening to. If you can, take a moment to leave a comment. That does us a lot of good. If you absolutely cannot get enough of Sends and Suffers podcasts, then check us out on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, which is like grabbing a taco with your boy and just hanging out. You get to hear upcoming episodes, talk to the community, learn what we have coming out, and most importantly, get plugged in to what I've got going on. I'd love to see you on there. And once again, thank you for listening to Sends and Suffers podcast. I am your host, Mario Stanley. Today's episode is a continuation of my conversation with Caleb, one of the photographers at the World Cup this past summer. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. It brings me a lot of joy and makes me cringe remembering what I saw. I hope you enjoy today's episode with Caleb. Okay. So, Caleb, broken leg.
Yes.
Shark meat. Titanium rods.
Yes. So I have a titanium rod that is the length of my lower leg from my knee to my foot. Mm-hmm. It's actually somebody who has more medical experience than I will laugh at this, but I did not know that when they put a nail in your leg, it doesn't mean that they put it beside your bone. It means that they core drill through your bone and put it inside of your bone. So they had to surgically make the incision in my knee and then drill down all the way through. And I apologize, this is getting very graphic, but it basically connects the interior parts of my tibia. And then I have 4 screws, 2 on each end of the bone that holds my tibia together. And then they surrounded the break with bone cement. But then on my
bone cement?
Bone cement. It is an adhesive that is of similar structural integrity to your bone. And it essentially surrounds the break until your body can reform the bone.
Okay.
Yeah. We're getting into the science fiction portion of this podcast.
Yeah. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know bone cement was a thing.
It's a real thing. It's wild.
I'm going to look for this in my local hardware store.
Yes. So that's the story of my tibia. My fibula was very, very broken and shattered into multiple pieces. I should probably, before I continue,
I mean, it's a podcast. It's not like people can see it.
Yeah. I should probably tell a story of how I broke it.
Yeah, I was wondering
instead
if we were
of
going to
unpacking the break itself.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure our doctoral our doctoral listeners are like really enjoying this.
I did get very, very. We talked about wormholes earlier. I researched an inordinate amount about the type of break that I had, and I discovered way too many graphic YouTube videos of surgeries. It was wild. Anyway, backing up chronologically 9 months ago, I was bouldering at a little place called Stone Fort in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And there is a highball boulder problem there called Storming the Castle.
I've heard of this.
It is a highball V1 in the guidebook. TBD whether it's actually a V1. But I was there bouldering with a friend, and we ran into some other guys who were there. And they were like, "Oh, we're going to go do Storming the Castle." I was like, "Oh, cool. I've never done that one before. I'll go check it out with you." So one of the guys just absolutely cruised it, made it look chill. And I was like, "Oh, that looks fine. I'll also do this highball V1." So I jumped on it, got through, and it's one of those boulders that like fools you at first. It's like it's pretty chill at the beginning, but it progressively gets harder towards the top. And then the crux move is the top move. So it eased me into it. It wooed me in, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I can do this. I can do this highball." And I get to the top and I'm like, this feels a little spicy. And I made a more dynamic move than I probably should have. And my right foot slipped. So I fell 20 feet and my left foot hit the pad, but my right foot did not. It landed in between the pad and the wall. And it was just enough height and just the right angle that I had an open compound tib-fib fracture. I made eye contact with my bone and said, that's not right. And then because I'm a psycho, I pulled out my phone and took a picture of it.
Do you still have it?
I do still have the photo, yes.
Oh, I got to see this.
It's pretty grody. I'll pull it out as I continue to tell the story. But before I saw what had happened, the first thing that I saw was my friend Jacob, and his face was just pure shock and fear. And that was my first cue of like, oh, something's wrong. And then I looked down and saw my leg.
The bone was not your first cue that something was wrong. No. Your friend's face.
When something like that happens, people who have gone through significant trauma will know and understand, like, you're in shock. You just don't know. It doesn't compute. Your body needs time to comprehend that something has gone horribly wrong.
I mean, I get that. But the bone out of the body wasn't enough.
No, it was not enough. So luckily, one of the guys that we had been climbing with had his WWOOFer, his Wilderness First Responder certification. So while Jacob went to call the paramedics, this rando that I had just met that day literally held my foot and my leg together until the paramedics arrived.
Yeah.
I was like, you're my hero.
Get your WWOOFer. I need to redo.
Get your WWOOFer. Everyone.
I need to redo mine, but it's probably the one. I will say this: your woofer is the one course that you can take in your life where you'll be like blah blah blah, but when you go through it, you're like blah blah blah. But when that one moment happens, whether it's a car crash, which is more likely someone getting hit, a pedestrian breaking their leg, or something another. But yeah. I was about to ask, like, did you guys have not enough pads, or was it this?
No,
it was just like, it was just a sitch.
We had plenty of pads. We had plenty of pads. My friends were actively spotting. This is a slab problem.
Oh,
yeah. So because I fell at the top, what I should have done was kick out so that I landed squarely in the pads. But because I fell straight down, I kind of cheese grated down. And that's why I landed in between the pad and the wall. Here's the photo.
Oh, let me
zoom
see
in.
it.
Zoom in on that bad boy.
I'm not zooming in. Oh, God, I'm zooming in.
You gotta,
dude, this thing looks like filet mignon.
Yeah, bro. You got to see the chunks.
Bro, I see your freaking man meat. And and this is still, and yes, this is PG. Bro.
Yeah. So needless to say, it was a very significant injury. And so after the paramedics arrive,
your Phantoms look like they were in good condition now.
Yeah. The freaking paramedics cut them off. Yeah. He took his Swizzers to my Phantoms and cut them off. I was pissed.
Damn.
Yeah.
I guess you can't really pull the shoe off at that point.
Yeah. I was genuinely terrified about that because they got there and my shoe was on and it was very tight and my foot was very loose, very loosely connected to my leg. And he was just like, how am I going to get this off? And I was like, just go for it. So he cut a portion of it away, but then I had to like slowly, very carefully pull it off. And that was excruciating. But then when they put me into the ambulance, they took me to the closest hospital, which was a mistake because it's a pretty small hospital. So they processed me in. And once the doctor actually came in, he looked at my leg and was like, sir, I'm so sorry. We can't help you. We don't have the facility to deal with a break of this significance. We have to transfer you to the larger hospital in town. So I had to get back into an ambulance, get taken to another hospital, get processed again. And that was a whole experience. But they took amazing care of me. The orthopedic surgeon was incredible. Dr. Gardner, shout out. You're awesome. Thank you so much for putting me back together. So I was in the hospital for about a week. But my favorite part of this story is about a month after I got out of the hospital. I was at a climbing event in Chattanooga at the Wahachie Boulders. And this climber friend of mine, Aaron Scott, who works in the orthopedic unit at the hospital where I was at, he comes up to me. He's like, Caleb, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. Can I take a look at your leg for you? How are you feeling? Basically doing like a free checkup for me.
Okay.
And he takes a look at my leg and we're just chatting. He's like, Caleb, it's great to hear that you're healing. We talk about you at the hospital. I was like, what the fuck do you mean? He's like, you're a case study at Erlanger, the hospital. I was like, what the fuck do you mean? He said that if my bone had exited my leg centimeters to the left, it would have severed a crucial nerve and artery, and they would have had to amputate my foot.
You would have been a pirate.
I would have been a pirate, right?
Oh my gosh.
I do, as often as possible throughout my life, try to embody as many pirate vibes as possible. This was not a planned part of that theme, but I would have been a pirate.
I'm not gonna lie. I think the universe was telling you maybe you were taking it too far previous to that and kind of proved the point.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, live your best life.
I have been Jack Sparrow for 4 Halloweens.
I could see you making a good Jack Sparrow.
And I will be one again this year. Our biggest fundraiser of the year, the SEC's biggest fundraiser of the year, is called BYOB, Buy Your Own Boulder Field. It's great. I've rebranded it this year as our Unhinged Party for Good. It's always been that, but it's never had that name. So it's always been spooky themed because it's always around Halloween. And we're the check-in the day before Triple Crown event, the bouldering competition. So it's usually spooky themed. People always dress up. It's about as close to horseshoe hell without getting your eyes wet. It's ridiculous shenanigans. But this year it's going to be spooky pirate themed. And I'm very excited for that because I have a 6-foot rubber ducky that I will be the pirate captain of. I'm trying to find a little kiddie pool that I can bring into the event. I'm also potentially trying to find a sponsor for a mechanical shark. Hello, brands out there. If you want to sponsor my mechanical shark, I'd be psyched.
Like, do they have to provide the mechanical shark, or
no? They just have to pay for it. I've sourced the mechanical shark. I just have to pay multiple thousands of dollars for it.
Is this like a mechanical bull?
Yes, it's a mechanical bull, but it's in the shape of a shark.
Oh,
yeah. So instead of a bull, it is a shark.
I mean, visually, I see this in my head. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm lost a little bit because I'm like, well, what happens if you fall backwards onto the fin? But I guess it's a soft fin.
Yeah. You'll figure it out when it happens.
No, I'm here for it. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, pirate vibes aside, I think one of the most interesting parts about that conversation with Aaron was that I had the initial shock, the like picturing in my mind of what my life would have been like if I had lost my foot. And I took that moment to like be present with that feeling and have that hypothetical moment of like, whoa, I could have lost my foot. But very swiftly after that initial feeling of, oh, fuck, I had this knowledge and recollection of a good friend of mine who is, he owns his own prosthetic practice in Chattanooga, Ronnie Dixon, amazing guy. But he's a amazing, strong climber who lost his leg. And I thought about him and I thought about, man, like he would have taken care of me. I would have gone to him and he's a friend. It wouldn't have been like a stranger. It would have been someone that is in my climbing community that I could have connected with and said, hey, like help me on this journey of recovering back to being able to climb again. And that gave me so much comfort and gave me so much gratitude for my community of climbers, because I'm just so blessed to know people who can help me recover from something as traumatic as that. And ever since my injury, I've had to obviously not climb, which is a challenge. It's hard to not be able to engage with the sport that I love in the way that I love to do it.
Yeah.
But I've been very lucky to be able to still be very deeply invested in the climbing community through my work with the SEC. I've gotten to be around my climbing community a lot. I've gotten to empower other people to climb. I've been able to facilitate climbing events. And I really did channel all of that energy that I would have put into climbing this past season. I put all of that into my work. And it's really been not a steep learning curve, but a expansion of my understanding of what I'm capable of when it comes to my work, because I've really enjoyed seeing what it looks like when I fully devote myself to creating opportunities for other people to climb.
I mean, I think that's like the next level of anything, though. It's like once you get into something so much that you move from the pupil stage to, you know, the provider stage. And I think that's one of the reasons why they call it like a provider when the AMGA and all these other certs, like you move into the stage where you are now facilitating or providing the opportunity, providing the experience for everybody else around you in your community, and you get involved. So that makes sense. It's beautiful. I mean, it's one, I'm happy you have your leg. 2, psyched that you're now in a textbook. 3, it's cool that you were able to redirect that energy, because like a lot of people, you know, you hear of like, there's a term for it. It's like, you know, something, I forget what it is, but there's a term for like skiers when they get hurt, they can't go down, they go into the deep depression. You know, I'm not saying it's like weather depression or anything like that, but like I don't know what it is, and someone will say it out there of what it is. If you do know what it is, leave it in the comments. I would definitely love to know. I think it's just nice to know that you were able to draw back, pull back, and then redirect that, because I feel like most people just kind of get into this woe is me status. And then they just are like, just woe is me. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And then they start to feel like the world is happening to them instead of the world is just happening around them. Yeah. And understanding that like I can still affect the world for a greater good around me, even though my situation sucks. Yeah. Because like at that point, I think, and I honestly, and now saying this, like it doesn't really surprise me, because like you just did what any good climber should do, is just embrace the suck. It's like in the moment, like, okay, it's like the routes I can't do this way. I can't go that way. So what am I going to do? Embrace the suck. I'm just going to aid this thing and just like French free it and just like get up the wall. Like at this point, my ego, my pride, I'm not going to free climb this thing. Let's just like get it done. And I think you really kind of redirected that energy, and that's beautiful. I'd like to ask you, like, how did you get into photography? Because that's like, in hearing about all your stories and your journeys, it's like, I know that's what you do. Yeah. But like, we really haven't talked about like, what was the inspiration? What was that? And then, what keeps you shooting? Because I've met a lot of people. I think with the advent of like, obviously this has been a thing forever, but like digital cameras, like you can get a nice camera now at a reasonable price. Yeah. And I almost feel like there's such a surplus of them on the industry, in the market, that you can get a nice used one, and get it serviced or whatever, but like you can still get that. And like we were talking about, like even my equipment that I have now, I'm borrowing a friend's camera, but I have more lighting equipment and production equipment than I do actual camera equipment. I rent all my cameras just because almost everybody I know has a Sony A7, everybody I know has, a very nice Canon or whatever, and it's like, but like, how, I guess, what inspired you to get into this? Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, this is a 2-part question. How did I get into it, and what keeps me doing it? Cool. So what got me into it? I was a climber before I was a photographer. So really what got me into it was going on climbing trips and having this very deep desire to capture those moments and capture those trips and be able to come home and tell stories better with visual representations. Cause I'm a very visual person. Like if I'm trying to recount something to someone, I really prefer to have something to show them rather than just tell them about it. So my senior year of college, my friends and I were like, oh, let's take a senior trip. We're graduating. Let's go to Utah. So we went climbing in Provo, Utah, as well as Moab. Provo. Yeah. Leading up to that trip, I was like, this is going to be a big adventure. Like, this is my first time out west. I want to be able to capture this. I had been inspired by amazing photographers like John Glassberg, Jimmy Chin, Chris Burkard. Like, these were my favorite people to follow because they created such beautiful imagery from the places that they went, these beautiful, incredible spaces. So I was like, that's what I want to be. Like, I'm never going to be a professional athlete. Like, I enjoy climbing and I enjoy the sport, but I'm a creative. Like, I really love to storytell in that way. That is something that I feel like can be a value add. So for my birthday, my dad got me this like very cheap, dinky little point and shoot camera, leading up to this trip. Very kind, very, very generous. I'm so thankful that he did that, because that was a huge catalyst for me feeling what it was like to play that role on a trip. So I was not the like quote, quote trip leader. I was not the logistics guy. I was not the
Whatever. Yeah.
But your role was basically the journalist.
I was the documentarian. I was the one who was like, hey guys, like, let's make sure we remember this and remember it well. I wanted to find ways to capture the little details of the trip, not just the big wide landscapes, but the fact that we had loaded down a Civic with a roof bike rack and a back bike rack. The fact that we constantly ate Cheez-Its the whole trip. Like that was just a theme of the trip. Like those little details, those storytelling details were really fun for me. And I enjoyed doing that because it made me feel so much more present in those adventures. It was thinking through like, what are the elements that make this adventure special and unique to us? Not just another climbing trip, but what are the inside jokes or the stories that we're going to be able to tell after this trip is done? So that experience of going on a climbing trip with people that I love, people that I was close with, and being able to capture those memories together was really, really special for me. So that was the experiential catalyst for photography. What really kickstarted photography for me was the year after I graduated college. I had the opportunity to live with a friend of mine who was a professional photographer, and he mostly did wedding photography. He was very good at it, very talented. And he one day just said, hey, like, I've got this shoot this afternoon. What are you doing? Do you want to come hang out and shoot with me? And because he knew that I had my like little point and shoot thing. I was like, sure, yeah, that sounds fun. And he let me borrow his like high level DSLR professional piece of equipment. He just let me borrow it. He put it in my hands, was like, this is how you use it. Like, this is how you do aperture and ISO and all of these like very technical terms that I had no idea at the time. And he really took me under his wing. He mentored me and taught me everything that I needed to know in order to be a professional photographer. So huge shout out to Christian Turner for being just a good friend and having that love to share. Like what we were talking about just earlier, like he had reached that point where he was no longer a consumer. He was a provider. Yeah. He was someone who had such a deep love for his craft that he wanted to share it and bring other people into it. And he did that with me. So that really kickstarted my professional photography. Like everything before was just very personal, very like, oh, like I want to capture memories. But he opened the door to what it looked like to be a professional and to provide a service. And that created opportunities for me to do everything from commercial photography, wedding photography, event photography, maternity photography, just all portraiture, graduation photos. I did it all. I said no to nothing. I was like, if it's an opportunity for me to be a professional, make money, do the photography thing, I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to do it. So that has always been for me a really great technical skill, because I went to college, I have my marketing degree, but I really didn't feel like I had any tangible skills from my degree. I had a lot of head knowledge and strategic thinking skills, but I didn't feel like I graduated with any technical, tangible skills. Photography was the first one that I was like, ooh, this is something that works well with my marketing degree that I can do and create. And then later on, I added to that. I added graphic design. I added videography. But yeah, photography was my gateway drug into like, oh, I can actually create something for people that they can use. And that was really special. And even though I did all of those different types of photography, adventure photography and climbing photography was what kept my sacred stoke flame alive. It was the thing that kept me shooting. Yeah. Because you can do work. And I think that's really important to distinguish when it comes to any kind of creative skill set. You have, what's the term? Someone broke this down for me in really beautiful language once. You have, maybe it was just as simple as saying like you have your professional work and your personal work. I think this was a a TED talk that I listened to. Actually, professional work is the thing that you do to pay the bills.
Yep.
It's something that you get the job. It is not your own. Typically, you're working on a team. Typically, there are a lot of other opinions that are influencing the creative output, and that's good. That is professional work. It is something that you can do with others for a shared goal in mind, typically. Personal work is the thing that you do to keep you excited, keep you passionate, keep you stoked. And the example that was used in this TED talk, I believe, was musicians. Like as a musician, as a professional musician, most of the time you're doing work that's not your own. Whether you're a professional guitar player or someone who's part of a symphony, like you are doing musical work that has been planned or created by someone else, and you just show up and you do the thing. Personal work is the work that like you're just jamming.
Yeah.
You maybe it's you go to the park and you busk and you perform for people. You do it for fun, or you're doing it for yourself. You're creating a melody. You're creating something your own. You're songwriting. Like you have to have a balance of both in order to be a sustainable creative. Because if you do just personal work, odds are it's very rare that you'll ever be successful. There are a few aficionados who get like
They can just
grabbed
do it.
up. They can just do that and they can make money, and that's amazing. But that is so rare.
Yeah, there are outliers.
Yeah. So you can't just do personal work because you won't be able to pay the bills more than likely. But you also can't just do professional work because you will burn out, man. You have to have something that keeps the sacred stoke flame alive, and you have to have the things in your life that provide for you and create a sustainable infrastructure for you to have a career, whatever it is. So for me, climbing and adventure photography is what keeps that sacred stoke flame alive. And any commercial photography work that I do is made more enjoyable and made more life-giving because I still do the things that give me life.
That makes sense. Have you ever read the book of Five Rings?
No, I have not.
It's all about balance. So like when you talk about this is what I hear in balance. And I know what you mean about professional and personal work. It's like, I just finished up doing a podcast series. We're going to record our last run tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Alexa and I are going to meet and we're going to record our last closing of her series on that. And her doing an LGBTQ plus takeover of my podcast has been probably one of the biggest growth experiences of like just managing someone else, but managing my own content. It's forced me to step up my own quality and step up my own work. And I've had to learn how to grow and be better at what I'm doing. And then I am getting ready to start editing a friend's podcast, to start working on that. And more so just like helping with like composition of how they're going to put it together and things like that. They just reached out to me and, you know, you've listened to my podcast. It's pretty much like cut, paste, maybe a few things, trims here, but for the most part, you know, when the mic's on, that's what you get. But I do 100% agree with you because now that I had the opportunity to work on quote unquote other people's podcasts, I'm more excited to do my own. And it is this big balance. You know, one thing I want to double back to though, that I think you said is really unique. And I don't think I've ever really thought about this is like with the roles on a trip. I've always been in either the operations side or the leader side of it. But then you said it, the documentarian, and like, it's interesting. Like, what do you believe? What are all the possible roles of, I guess, what are the most common roles of the trip? You have the leader, the person who probably planned it all. You have, I guess, the operations person, but I imagine that would be the leader, but I guess not. It doesn't have to be. You have the documentarian.
Like, what other roles do you think that there usually is filled in on a trip? Because this concept of like trip roles intrigues me because I don't know. Yeah. But like that, I guess that's my question to you. My question is what do you think are the most common roles that are on these trips?
Yeah, I don't know that I could say most common. I can
just-
only really speak from my personal experience
Hit
with
me.
trips. I can think specifically of, so my friend, I went on a trip to Canada a couple years ago, up to Banff National Park.
Mhm.
And I went with two friends, Jacob and Cody. Jacob is our logistics guru. He can think of every potential circumstance, scenario, and prepare for that.
Okay.
Love that about him. He's a planner. I love empowering him into that role and unleashing him into that role. I don't question him ever when it comes to planning because I trust him.
That makes sense.
And he's proven time and again because he's very good at it. And he's prepared for every logistical circumstance. Cody is our qualitative experience manager. I'll just coin that term right now. He's my friend who is all about having a quality, unique experience to remember. He's my friend who is just, he knows so much about coffee. He's the creative director for a marketing firm. He's a great storyteller. He knows a ton about food and about music. And anytime we go on a trip together, he's always the one who's like, guys, like I've done my research. Like this is going to be the best experience. We should go to this brewery and then we should go to experience charcuterie here. And like anytime we travel, I know that he's going to find the hike with the best view or something like that, where I'm like, okay, like Cody has done his research to know that we can do this activity or go to this place or experience this food or beer. So I'm going to trust him to take over that part of the trip. And then I'm the documentarian. Like I just want to be really, really observant during the trip. I want to make sure that any serendipitous thing that happens, that I capture it. I'll never forget. We did another trip to Cochise Stronghold in Arizona. And there was this moment, speaking of serendipity, where we had just driven in the night before. It was very late. It was very dark. So we just like very quickly set up our tents. And I think we forgot to put the rain covers on, the flies on.
Yeah.
And there was like a dust storm that night. And we woke up the next morning and there was just so much sand in our tents. And it was this perfect storm of, we're like tired, groggy, wake up. We're all basically still in our underwear. And Jacob grabbed his tent and just flipped it upside down and is shaking it over his head. And he's just standing there in his underwear, just doing this. And I took out my camera and I took a photo of him. And I was like, that's not anything that will ever be like a hero shot for any particular thing. But for me, that is a precious core memory of my friend looking silly as hell doing this random thing because we forgot to put our rain flies on.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. It's funny. I love that you capture those moments that are like, you capture the moments that I think most people would just forget. Like when you're telling me, people forget to take the camera out because they're too busy in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the moments you want to be able to remember because you look at them and you go back from that. Your trip reminds me of my first trip to Zion with my buddy Cameron and Tucker. And we didn't take as many photos of it, but one thing that I did is like I pulled out my phone after every climb and I probably wrote like 3 or 4 paragraphs of like what the trip was. And that's probably honestly, I think that's like the only bubble I have on my Instagram. Like I don't have like 9 million bubbles and they're curated. Like this is my workout bubble. This is that bubble. It's like mine is like, nope, this is the one thing I got and like, I haven't had another trip like that. And like, that just makes me pull out my phone and want to just talk about it and talk about that moment. But that's cool. I was curious about that because like I like that concept of like roles on a trip. And, you know, I think I always just from owning a guiding company, I'm always thinking about like logistics, always, like logistic this, how do we make this happen? How do we get from here to here? These people, this and that. But that's more the creative side of it. And I think that's more, much more beautiful side of like what the roles actually are and how they actually function. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I don't think that people think about that. Maybe they do. Maybe I'm just the one who doesn't think about it at all. But I think that's actually a really beautiful way to like plan a trip and think about a trip instead of just think about what you're going to do on the trip, but think about like, how are you going to remember this trip? How are you going to like savor this trip? How is it going to be savory in your mind? I mean, it's already sweet because you're doing it, but how do you make it savory?
Yeah. I think, how do I qualify this? I have loved going on trips consistently with those guys every year. So we try to do an annual desert trip every year. Okay. Whether it's Red Rock or Cochise or something, we travel consistently together, which is really such a gift because you learn these things. You learn what people are good at. You learn what makes them come alive and what makes them thrive. I would never want to put someone in a box on the beginning of a trip, not knowing them. I would never want to go up to someone and be like, hey, you're the logistics person. This is the role that I have assigned to you. Yeah. I think when you're traveling like that, it's really important to go into it with an open expectation instead of a like finite expectation to say, hey, like we're going on this trip together. Maybe if you're traveling together for the first time, say, hey, like these are all the things that need to get done. Let's work as a team to get them done. Mm-hmm. And then you start to see organically like where people start to gravitate towards. Mm-hmm. Because I think, and this kind of ties back to photography for me, because I could have pursued photography full time. There was a short amount of time where I was just full-time freelance. It was my only thing. I tried to make that my career. And I learned very quickly that was not for me. Why? I thrive when I work on a team. Okay. I'm not a very good solo act. I'm not a lone wolf. I get very bored very quickly, very lonely very quickly. And I just work better when I'm on a team. That makes sense. I learned that specifically about my work trajectory, that I needed to be part of a larger picture. And I still wanted to be very intentional about that. I wanted to be very proactive about finding stories that I really cared about and missions that I really cared about. So I've been very lucky to consistently find work in the outdoor industry. But I have very much found that I do my best work when I am filling a role that I love and when I'm around people who are filling roles that they love. I feel very lucky. Our team at the SEC is absolute power team. Meg, our executive director, is just so logistically talented and thinks through all of the back end things very well. We were mentioning this earlier, how you don't enjoy the back end logistics. I'm the same way. I hate back end logistics. I can't think that way. I get very frustrated and just lost when I have to like dig into that. She thrives there. She comes alive there. And then our stewardship director, Kate Haynes, she's incredible at rallying volunteers and finding roles for people. And so she's really good at whenever we plan events or plan trail days, she's like, okay, what are the tasks that need to be done and the people who can fill those roles? Okay. And then I come in and I'm the Sultan of Stoke. I'm the chief Stoke officer. I can rally people and be the announcer, the MC, and keep the energy high. And whether it's on the front end, like marketing and promoting the event, inviting people, rallying people, or during the event when I'm just like getting people hyped up to do an activity or buy raffle tickets or play a silly game that we've come up with or get ready to go climb. One of my favorite moments I've ever experienced, Jeremy Collins, one of our favorite artists. He's one of the main organizers for 24 Hours of Horseshoe Hell. And he's always the announcer at the beginning. He like gathers everyone around and has them recite this climber's creed. And he has this persona, Gordo, that he like leans into. And that was really inspirational to me as a young climber. I was like, this guy is standing up in front of hundreds of people, getting them psyched out of their minds to suffer for 24 hours. That's incredibly powerful and wonderful and beautiful. And I get to experience a small piece of that when I do SEC events, whether it's one of our film nights or one of our outdoor climbing competitions or the BYOB fundraiser that we do every year. I love leaning into that part of the role. So I'm really thankful for my team because the incredible work that they do on their side of things that they're very good at. We talk about this all the time when we're doing our team meetings. The work that we do as individuals empowers our coworkers to do the work that they do. Like I could not do the work that I'm doing, telling stories, getting people stoked, getting people to care deeply about our rock climbing resources, if Meg was not doing her behind the scenes wizardry of access advocacy, or if Kate was not doing her stewardship work of planning trail days and taking care of the fixed hardware needs at our climbing areas or building trails. It feels like such a gift to be on such a team of people who are working together towards the same mission, but doing so in their unique, powerful ways and skills.
So how did this transition into shooting for USA Climbing and now for you shooting for the very first time ever in history that the IFSC is hosting Youth Worlds in the United States here in Dallas, Texas? Like, how did, like, it was, I guess, what was the transition for you to like get this job? Or was it just kind of a referral, or someone was like, yo, Caleb is the dopest motherfucker on the planet?
It was a little bit of all of that. So nice. I refer to myself as a serial opportunist. I just like I have a thought and I have a plan and I have an idea of what my future is going to be, but I never really like commit to that or like set in stone, like this is what I'm going to do with my life.
No, I mean, I don't think you're supposed to. I think life is like an ocean. It's like life is like an ocean and the winds. Like you kind of like you're trying to get to another place. You're trying to get to a land that you know exists. But at the end of the day, you have to go the way the wind blows and the ocean goes. You'll get there, but you don't get to go in a straight line.
Yeah. So for me, that meandering ocean faring line was I started working with the SEC, but I still wanted to keep like a small portion of my personal photography business alive. So I do the occasional freelance job. I shoot the occasional wedding for a friend. So I always just have that work kind of in the background. And last year, my old boss from the climbing gym that I used to work at, he was the marketing director. I was the marketing manager. He is the new marketing director for USA Climbing. So when he stepped into that role, he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, Caleb, like you're an amazing photographer. I love working with you. You're a friend. I would love to book you to shoot the occasional USA Climbing event. Is that something you'd even be interested in doing?" And I said, because I'm a serial opportunist, yes, of course, I would love that. That sounds amazing. So the first gig that I ever did for USA Climbing was a couple months ago. I shot collegiate nationals in Philadelphia, and it was such a great experience. I loved working with the USA Climbing team. I loved the high action, fast paced energy of shooting a comp, a multi-day comp at that level. It's a lot. It's long days. You're on the go, and moving at the speed that these competitions do, you have to be so attentive and so observant and so on your game for 12 hours a day for multiple days in a row. But I thrive in that chaos. I love that chaotic energy and the space that I can fill in that energy, because I get to create so much. I'm taking thousands of photos and editing so quickly and turning them around so quickly, but I get to see how happy that makes these climbers who, a lot of them who don't get past qualifiers or get past semis, they get to walk away from this comp with not much, but they get that photo. They get to say like, oh, this was my experience. I was there. And that's really special. And I really am honored that I get to be there for climbers in that way. So now, this is basically my second gig through USAC. Ben hit me up and was like, hey, would you like to photograph Youth Worlds? And I was like, Ben, of course, duh. I would absolutely love to do that.
I think I'm just going to go ahead and say this right now. Your second event for USAC is shooting Youth Worlds. Talk about hitting it out of the park.
I'm doing my dang best.
Yeah, I think you're doing all right, Playboy.
Yeah.
I think you're doing real good. I like something you just said really kind of resonated with me. You know, like thriving in chaos. And I really do firmly believe like that's like a mantra that I think a lot of people should be able to take in, especially climbers. Like if you can learn how to thrive in chaos, if you can learn how to manage chaos, if you can learn how to succeed in chaos, the world turns into a playground.
Yeah.
The world turns into anything. Like the world just turns into a sheer opportunity. Like everything is opportunity, because most people, what we perceive to be as chaos is another person's manageable, and another person's manageable is, and another person's chaos is that. It's like the old saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure, you know? And I think that's a really, really, really powerful statement, because as climbers, you know, that is something that theoretically speaking, we should be able to do. Like, you know, like when the gets getting, and we all know that moment, and whether it's like mountain biking, climbing, hiking, trail running, ultra marathon running, climbing, whatever, like we all know that moment where it's like, this is getting a little out of hand. This is getting a little on the wild side. Like I feel like I'm truly on the sharp end. But if you can always bring that back to, and I'm not saying bring it back to like calm it down or bring it back to reality, because that's not how it works. Like I don't want to say that, because saying it's come back to reality is just the stupidest thing you can ever say in the world, because you're literally on the edge of your own reality, pushing yourself there. I think the thing is if you can manage that situation, that, especially as us as athletes, we're managing the chaos in our own head. And so then when that chaos is external and we're just like, oh, okay, rolling through it. And this is a thing I think, and this is personally what I think why a lot of people like climbing is people are like, I'm working on this crazy hard problem. I'm doing this thing. It just seems impossible, blah, 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 I'm about that. And then they go to work and their boss or their life is like, rah, rah, rah. And they're like, you have no idea what I was doing earlier today. You have no idea what I'm going to thrash myself and destroy myself and give myself so much mental anguish. And then I'm going to dream about this boulder. I'm going to dream about this route. And it's going to cause me so much anger. And then I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and be like, that's the beta. Like the rest of it is small fries. And I don't know. I think that's a skill set that climbers really have. I really don't think that we harness enough. Nikki Smith really said this really well recently in a podcast with me and Alexa. It's like, and actually another person who said it is, oh my God, her name is escaping me. Oh my gosh. Hold on, give me 2 seconds. 5, 4. It will come to me in a minute.
We'll keep talking and you'll remember in like 5 minutes.
She's a tattoo artist.
Marina?
Yes.
Oh, I love Marina.
Marina's great.
Yeah.
Marina, if you're listening to this, hey girl.
Big fan. We love you.
No, always, forever. But Matt, Marina and I talked about this in a podcast like a while back. Like
we as climbers, and I think all of us are saying this, but I just don't think it's really being said or done. And maybe it's just us who have been in it a while, but we inherently have the skills. Like we literally seek out doing the hardest. We are literally trying to make the hardest climb, the hardest thing possible that we're trying to do. We're trying to do it in the easiest way possible, the most efficient way possible, in a way that allows us to have the most amount of gas in the tank, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And maybe there's some random fourth, chakra out there that I don't know about, but we're trying to have that much extra fuel in. And I think if we as just people, getting back to this long rant is boiling down to this. It's like, I love how you say like just managing chaos, because I think that's what allows us to succeed as climbers. And I think that's what allows us to succeed and be so tenacious with projects. You're a serial opportunist. You also are doing this as the SSC, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying?
A lot of letters. Yeah.
A lot of letters are going on here. And then, cause I'm thinking of like USAC, IFSC, SCC, like
AAC.
There's a lot. There's too many C. Can we take the C out of the situation here?
Too many C's.
Yeah. I mean, we all know it's climbing. Can we just say it's like rad or something? Change a letter or something? No. We're going sideways here. But, I do think that's a unique skill that exists within the adventure sport world, because like, I don't know. I just now really thinking about it, like you have to manage the chaos, or the chaos gets you.
Or you at least have to be capable of managing the chaos when the time arises. Can I get super nerdy for a second?
Hit me with the one time.
So one of my favorite book series is the Dune series by Frank Herbert.
Yes, classic.
And in that book series, there is this mantra known as the Litany Against Fear.
Ooh.
And it's typically recited in high stress situations. But it goes like this. I must not fear. Fear's the mind killer. I will face my fear and I will permit it to pass through me. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. And when the storm has passed, I will turn my inner eye to see that the fear is gone and only I will remain. I actually have that tattooed on my body. Only I will remain. Yeah. But so I started reading that book series as a young kid. I read it with my dad, and that litany against fear was a very formative early concept of that chaos management for me, because I was able to use that as a framework for high stress situations, like anything, whether it was climbing or a tough relationship or stress with school or work. I would be able to like kind of conceptualize with this like arbitrarily silly science fiction thing, but really truly meaningful to me in a very deep way. This idea of fear is a storm that I have the opportunity to weather. And if I can weather that storm and pass through that chaos and get to the other side, I will be the stronger for it. I will have been forged stronger by that experience, whatever it may be. And I think that has been truly a guiding light for me in my life, to say, okay, I'm receiving this chaotic energy, whatever it may be, whatever it may manifest as. I'm going to not quarantine it in my mind. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm not going to react strongly to whatever this chaos is. I'm going to create a space for it. I'm going to hold it, process it, and move through it. And whatever that journey looks like, whatever that moving through looks like, whether it's being emotionally raw for a little while or being vulnerable with someone, I'm going to move through that chaos to get to the other side and say, okay, I experienced that thing, whatever it was. Here's my personal experience of what I had. How do I take that energy and manifest it into something next. What is the next step from that chaotic energy? And I think it's been cool to experience a pretty broad range of chaos in my life, whether it's a broken leg or shooting a comp or experiencing tumultuous relationships or a 2020 pandemic. I don't know, like chaos comes in many forms, and we have to recognize that as humans, we are resilient creatures. I think resilience has been something that I've been meditating on recently, to say that, or to own that I have resilience, that I can survive things. It's pretty special to be able to say, like, I am capable of receiving whatever the world gives me and making it through that and coming out on the other side, hopefully a better person.
That's beautiful. It's very beautiful. I'm not going to lie, though. Loki can go back in his box for a little bit because it's been a little wild.
Screw like that Screw that motherfucker.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah, no. That is a very beautiful thing. And I think, and I like how you put that and you wrap that up in a nice, beautiful package. One person that you've mentioned a lot in this podcast, maybe not a lot, but at least 2 or 3 times you mentioned your dad and your parents. Like, what role have they really played? I mean, obviously bringing you into this world, like
that's a given.
Doing the deed, but like, you mentioned,
shout out to mom and dad for bringing 2 together, because we don't know how.
Hopping on the good foot, doing the bad thing. But you've mentioned them, and it's always kind of been in correlation to, I don't remember the exact phrases that you're saying, and obviously we can go back and listen to this later, but essentially it boils down to this. One of my good friend, Taylor, who is about to be a proud mama, if she isn't already a mama right now, because that thing's hot in the oven, ready to come out. She said something to me in a very tumultuous time in my life. Mario, you can't go around, over, and under. It's only through. And I feel like anytime you talked about anything monumental in your life, you've brought up your parents. And so, like, how have they played like a role in like your development in all of this and what you're doing? I mean, I'm assuming they're very proud of you. I would be. I'd be like, this is my boy. You see this? He's doing good, and I made this. But what are they to you?
Ooh, we're about to get vulnerable.
I mean, we don't have to, boo-boo.
No.
This is your show as much as it is mine.
Let's do it. So
diving
I'll preface
diving deep into the river now. Hallelujah.
I'll preface with this. I love my parents deeply. They are very special people in my life, and I wouldn't be who I am today without them, obviously. Growing up, all I really had was my parents and my brother, because we lived out in the middle of nowhere. So
older, younger
brother.
Okay.
I grew up the oldest of 2. And we were all just very close. We spent a lot of time together. We did a lot of things together. We went on trips together. We spent a lot of time in the North Carolina mountains. Loved going there every summer. Went to El Salvador quite a lot because that's where my mom is from.
Okay.
So a lot of Christmases in the tropics, which was always super fun.
No one's complaining about that.
Yeah, nobody's complaining about that. And I'm very proud of my Latino heritage as well as my American family. But I always took great pride in the fact that I was of diverse heritage. So I would say the role that my parents have in my life was very influential in my formative years. As an adult, not so much. So they instilled a lot of love and a lot of care and a lot of depth in me growing up, which I will forever be grateful for, because I think growing up in a house like that, it was nothing was ever surface level. Everything was always very like, let's unpack this. Like, let's dive into the depths of what you're feeling. Like, let's have a very safe emotional space. Like I feel very blessed to have had such loving, caring, nurturing parents, very nurturing. Gosh, my dad is like, that's the first way I describe my dad always is like, he was a very nurturing father. Unfortunately, while I was in college, my parents separated, and that really turned our family dynamic upside down, put it into a blender, put that blender inside of a hurricane, put that hurricane inside of a black hole, and just like really messed everything up, which I had to mourn. I had to go through a season where I really was unwell because of how my parents separated, how they managed. That was really unhealthy. And that was a big catalyst for me learning that my parents were humans, which is an important lesson. I think it's really critical that in our developmental process as people, we learn that our parents are human. And it's really unfortunate that I learned it in that way, but I went through a season where I really resented my parents and really did not want to be related to them, and feel very lucky that we have since rebuilt our relationships with each other and have reconciled in many ways. But our relationships are just fundamentally different now. And I think it's unfortunate that as an adult, when I have come into what I would call my thriving years, where I'm really finding my identity as a person, I'm really getting deep into what is fulfilling in my life, I don't get to share that with them as much. They know that I love my job.
Why don't you get to share it with them as much? Is it because you don't want to? And I only ask this question because how old were you when your parents separated?
I was 21.
So I was 23 when my parents separated. Mm-hmm. And
it's a weird time. It's a weird time for your parents.
It is. So I take it back. I was 23, but my parents had already been separated for like a year to maybe 2 years. They just never told me and my brothers.
Oh, wow.
Like we had no idea.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, like I got a phone call from my brother and he's like, "Did you know?" And I'm like,
yeah.
Like, what are you even talking about?
My experience was very similar.
It's wild. Yeah. But isn't it really wild with that? Because like, I was, the only way I can describe it is I was so bewildered. But then I don't know, man, I had so much empathy for my mom and my dad because at the end of the day, I was like, you know something? My mom and my dad are my heroes. Mm. They're the most superhero people in my entire life. I love them. I cherish them. In my mind, they can do no wrong even when they do wrong. But it was at that moment that I had to realize that they are two separate individuals.
Yep.
And they are two separate people with two separate passions, joys, happiness. And it was the first time that I had to, one, look at my parents as two separate individual people, not just my parents. Two, I had to take in consideration the content and the character and the thing of their own hearts. And three, it was the first time I really, honestly, truly had to ask my question, well, what do they like? What does my mother want? What does my father want? Mm. Because it was always like, I don't know. I think as their children, you immediately think, oh, I know what they want. But what I think I know what they want is really what I want to give to them because I am their child, because I know them, because I have known them for my whole life. And what I want to give them is what they really want. But I am not them. And it's just like this really like hard hitting heavy moment. I remember it took me a couple days to kind of like wrap my brain around like what?
Yeah.
It's wild, man.
Yeah. Family's weird. Family's a wacky thing.
I think it's supposed to be that way.
Yeah. I have this conversation pretty regularly with friends that family is just a challenging thing, and I've had to process this very deeply over the years, that family looked a certain way for me growing up, and family looks very different now.
Is that because you're older, or do you think the example has changed?
I think it's just circumstance. I think the seasonality of life is a very real thing. And I think if we try to rebel against that, we'll put ourselves in a lot of hurt. And if we instead embrace the seasonality of life, we can better glean the value from it. And I say all of that to say, I have experienced two very distinct seasons of family. One very like idyllic, wonderful growing up way. One very tumultuous, crazy, wacky, hurtful, but also redemptive way. And what that has done for me is created an expectation for my future that there will probably be more different, unique seasons further down the line. So I hope that I'm preparing myself emotionally, spiritually, my character, so that I can be resilient and weather that change, because my hope someday is that I have my own family, and who knows what challenges I will face or my family will face together in those times. And I don't know. I can't predict the future. Maybe I'll go through a similar season that my parents did. And I think it's really important for us to prepare ourselves emotionally for those changes, not hamstring ourselves and not like, what's the term where you predict something for yourself and then you create that reality? Self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what it is. Self-fulfilling prophecy. That is what we don't want. What we want is to be prepared for potential eventualities, but don't set yourself up for failure by just expecting that you're going to have brokenness. Brokenness is inevitable. Have you seen the spoilers? Spoilers are about to happen. Have you seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once yet?
No.
Dude, watch it. Oh my God. It's so good.
Okay.
So good in the sense that it poses very deep emotional questions and unpacks them in a very unique way. Production wise, plot wise, questionable whether it's going to be a great movie or not. Neither here nor there. That's subjective to each person's experience. I really enjoyed the family dynamic of that movie because it is very raw and very real and very emotional. And there's no like really amazing tie it up in a bow resolution to it. It's very messy and it's very honest. And I think it poses that question of time and future and adds the element of alternative realities. So you get that experience of like, ooh, what if this happened or this happened that could potentially change how our family dynamic would have been. So one of the punchlines to the movie is nothing matters. And you can take that and you can receive that statement and say, ooh, nothing matters. Therefore, I'm not going to care about anything. Nothing matters. Therefore, I'm going to abandon everything, abandon morality, abandon purpose, abandon life, whatever that may be. Nothing matters. Therefore, I do not matter. Or you could say, nothing matters. There is freedom to be found there. Nothing matters. So I will take advantage of every opportunity. I will seek out new opportunities if something isn't working for me. Nothing matters. Therefore, I can have the freedom to experience different things and not worry about the consequences.
I think that's beautiful because it's funny. It's perspective. It's perspective. It's personality. It's kind of your take on it and your life experience. It's funny when you were giving all these examples of nothing matters. This to me, if you were to tell me in life, well, Mario, nothing matters in life. Okay, well, I'm unabashedly, uncontrollably gonna love on you. And I'm gonna unabashedly, uncontrollably going to give all the affection that I want. At the same time, I will also rage that I want, because if it doesn't matter, what do I have to lose?
That's it. What do you have to lose?
I have, and I think the flip side of that is, since I have nothing to lose, I have everything to gain. And I don't know. Another thing too, it's funny. Have you heard? I think it was so beautiful when you're talking about your parents and how that whole experience goes to you. Have you heard the sounds of the black hole yet?
I have not. No.
Oh my God, bro. When you were talking about like how your whole world collapsed.
Yeah.
One of my favorite comedians, Tony Baker, talks about it. He was like, this is exactly how a black hole should sound. Eerie. So hold on. Let me see if I can do this here.
I don't know if I'm prepared for this.
Oh no, dude. It was so weird and eerie. Okay. This is not it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and. So I'm going to play the sound of a black hole. But I'll actually cut it out and see if I can snag it from the internet and not get yelled at for it. But this is the sounds of a black hole. Sounds like the abyss of Hades and hell drawing everyone into it. But it's like, it's funny when you were talking about that. I literally, in the moment you said that, I've listened to this sounds like 4 or 5 times because I think it's just so unique. But like a black hole sucks everything into it. Nothing escapes it. Everything, even light, gravity itself is pulled into it. And then when you talk about sadness, wow, this is heavy. Okay, so I'm just going to run with this here. When you talk about your whole reality just being broken and changed and the foundation that you've known your whole life, and all of a sudden it's just ripped out from underneath you, that sound to me is a cross between sadness and wailing and a tornado that does not spin things upward, but it spins things inward. And it's this sound that like just lets you know that like this is the end. But the beauty of it is, and this is as silly as it is it's funny. I was watching this, I can't remember the name of the TV show on Netflix, but this I think it was like the Sandman or the Dreams or whatever it is, and he's fighting Lucifer, who's played as a woman. And, it's like, I am a black hole. I am death. I am the destroyer. And it's like, what can defeat a black hole? What can defeat anything? What can defeat the end of time, the end of life? And the only thing is hope. I think hope combined with love and compassion, but bottom line, it's hope. And I think, as 2 grown men here, just like thinking about our families and things like that, it's like, I think that's what I had to have. I know for me, that's what I kind of had to have for my own parents. Like I had to hope that they were making the right decision for themselves, because regardless of however I felt and regardless of whatever I thought, it doesn't matter. I just have to hope. But I do need to acknowledge how I feel. And that sound was like so synonymous when I heard it. Because I was like, why does this remind me of so many things? And ultimately, reminds me of so many things because we are a part of the universe. We are just matter. We are stardust. At the end of the day, we are made of the same thing that the stars, the universe, and the rest of the galaxy is made out of. The only difference is we're combined a little differently. But yeah, man, when you said that, I just like that sound was playing in my head. And I was like, oh my God, why is this here? Why does this seem so serendipitous? And it's like, they match.
Yeah, that was harrowing. Listening to that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm heavy. Getting sucked in. I think I've seen that show, The Sandman. It's so good. And that specific scene is so amazing because you get to experience that full story arc of beginning in a challenge and that challenge just escalating and escalating and escalating. And ultimately kind of following that hero's journey of down to like despair. Mm-hmm. And from that despair, rising into climax of hope. And I think what's been cool and what I'm so thankful about this season of my life, my girlfriend and I have recently been chatting pretty often about who we are now. It's so special to reflect on what our younger teenage selves hoped for, Lord. And think about how we are living that hope and living that dream. Mm-hmm. Like for her, one of her things was she really wanted to have a beautiful home and a beautiful space and a dog and a cat and a really like great community in our hometown or in her hometown. She grew up in Chattanooga and she has all of those things. We have a beautiful home. We have a dog named Basil and a cat named Jack. And we have a really great community in Chattanooga. And for me, my hope as a young teenager was very much centered around this idea of I didn't have an identity. So my hope as a young kid was I really want to find a passion and I really want to have a community that cares deeply about me that I also care deeply about. And I also want to have long hair and tattoos. So here I am as a 30-year-old and I have those things, man. I have passion. I have two passions, really. I have photography and I have climbing. I have these things that fulfill my soul and give me life and keep that sacred stoke flame alive. And I also have a wonderful community of people that I care deeply about that have taken care of me in really meaningful ways while I've been injured. I have long hair and I have tattoos. So I think for us as a couple, we really have enjoyed kind of extrapolating that thought of hope to the next step. So like here we are kind of at the middle. We have manifested this feeling of hope and these desires for our future to where we are now. What are we doing and what are we hoping for the future? And who knows, maybe we can manifest it. Maybe we can create this reality of continued hope. And one of those things for me is I have this vision for my future that is kind of built around the
predetermined, predestined.
No, not premeditated. One of the critical necessary pieces of this is that I live somewhere for a long period of time.
Okay.
So for me right now, that's Chattanooga. Like I very intentionally moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee.
How long have you been there now?
I moved there in 2017. So math, 5 years, 5 years. I have this vision for being an established member of a community that I know and am known by my community.
I understand that.
Yeah,
because
I think the reason I hope for that is because I see very specific people in my community that I love dearly, people that I would consider mentors, people that I would consider like very valuable members of our community. And I think to myself, oh, I hope that someday I can be of similar value. I want to be someone in my climbing community, hopefully specifically in Chattanooga, that has consistently added value in a way that when I look back on 30, 40 years of life lived, that I can feel that I am an established member of the community, because I see the impact that is done by people like that. Mm-hmm. Because I think we've romanticized the dirtbag nomad life. It's valuable. It's great. It's cool. It's fun. I really want to dig deep roots down and invest time, energy, money, life into a place to consistently be improving it. And I think what's cool, and we've kind of mentioned this a couple of times as we've been chatting, the time that we're in now, specifically in the climbing industry, is really cool because we are receiving the baton from the generation before us, the developers, the people who have kind of established what climbing looks like, especially here in the States. It's still pretty young by meta standards. But we are receiving it from that previous generation. And now we get to hold the baton and carry it this next leg. So what are we going to do with that? What are we going to bring to the table? How are we going to steward this time that the climbing industry is in? Are we going to improve it? Are we going to create sustainable infrastructure so that it's supported and survives this next season? Or are we just going to take advantage of the resources that we have available to us and say, screw the next generation? I think that's a challenge. That's a challenge that I really often try to bring to new climbers, is say, hey, yeah, this is super fun. Glad you're stoked. What are you doing to be involved? Because I think we're well past the point of casual involvement in this sport. Yeah. And it's a unique journey for everyone. If you want to be a casual climber and just have it as part of your lifestyle, whatever. But if you're going to claim status as a climber, you really need to think deeply and hard about what it means to be a good steward of our climbing resources.
When is that point, do you think, for most climbers? Like, when is that point? Because you can't, if I just bought my first pair of shoes, you can't ask me that question. That's not reality.
You haven't developed love. You haven't developed
But like, when do you think that kind of is? Is that like when I'm taking my first outdoor trip? Is that when I want to join my first like climbing coalition? Like, just for the listener base, like when is that? I'm a big fan of leap before you're ready. Like, a friend of mine, Chelsea Murren. Oh my God. Hold on. We're gonna get this correct, and then I can just edit out my mistake here. Hold on. I have to know this now. Murren. Yeah. A friend of mine, Chelsea Murren, said this. It's something that we were talking, and she really mentioned this to me. She was like, something she learned is like, you have to run before the universe pushes you and jump before the universe shoves you. But there's a moment, I think, before that where we all know, or you begin to know. It's like, it's like the tide's kind of coming in, but it's not really coming in. It's like, but like you working for the SEC, like, when do you see that moment is for new climbers? When do you kind of see that moment happening? When should someone, leap before they're ready?
This is an interesting question. And just based on my very raw reaction to that question, I don't know that there's necessarily a specific time or a specific catalyst that I can think of, because everyone's journey is different. But what I would respond to that question is that it's never too early to plant a seed. It's never too early to have a conversation with someone and say, hey, you're getting into rock climbing. That's rad. Why are you stoked? What do you love? Are you a boulder? Are you a sport climber? Are you a track climber? Start the conversation. Lead that into potentially planting a seed and saying, hey, have you thought about this? What are your feelings around stewardship? Did you know that access is not free? And finding ways to incorporate into the conversation of new climbers at any time, really. Mm-hmm. It can be their first time in the gym. It can be their first time outside. And planting that seed and treating it like that cultivating mentality of gardening, because you can't expect to harvest the fruit of a tomato seed initially. You have to wait. You have to let it grow. And that growth is dependent on a lot of factors. It's dependent on access. So if someone gets to climb often enough, it's dependent on gear. If they have the socioeconomic status to support getting into the sport. There's a lot of community, having a stable and consistent community of people who will also do this crazy thing with you. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of factors there that contribute to someone being willing and able to engage with climbing sustainability at a meaningful level. But like I said, it's never too early to plant the seed of what hopefully will eventually grow into deeply caring about a resource that has potentially impacted their life in a meaningful way. And I think for me, when I was first starting to climb, if someone had had that conversation with me in the first year that I started climbing, it would have meant nothing to me. It would have just like gone over my head, and I would have been like, ooh, access is at risk. Whatever, dude. I'm just climbing at this woody in my college and occasionally going outside to this like county park. I guess it's fine, whatever. But over the years of climbing and seeing the certain climbing areas close down and losing access to climbing areas and seeing those photos of boulders getting actively blown up, I started to learn and have context for this is a really meaningful thing to see. I don't want this to ever happen to me. I also don't want it to ever happen to future generations of people. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do what I can as I'm able to influence that story. And when I was working for a climbing gym, it was inviting the SEC to come to events. It was being a guide and a teacher and taking people on their first climbing trip outside and teaching them the ethics. Very, very like organically. I never was an official guide. I never had my like AMGA certification or whatever, but I would.
Don't worry about it. I have my opinions on that. Yeah, we'll get. That's another episode.
Yeah, I took those opportunities to have conversations with people and say, hey, like maybe don't traipse through the woods off trail. Maybe don't poop right next to the trail or in that water. Maybe if your dog is sensitive to stimulus, maybe leave them at home. Because I was bitten by a dog at the crag. Like that's a whole nother conversation. But I think
go ahead. Sorry.
When it comes to climbing ethics and climbing stewardship, we have to recognize that everyone's journey is different. They are on different time stamps on that journey. So take the opportunity to have the conversation. Just don't expect the result that you want immediately. Agreed.
I think that, that's actually a beautiful answer to it, because I think that's like a one thing too. It's like, especially with people like us who have been in it for a while, it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I think it's easy to put the horse before the carriage before the horse, or however that phrase goes.
Horses, carts, whatever.
Yeah. Things. Because you want people to care and you want them to be involved.
Yes.
And what you want doesn't mean they're going to drink the Kool-Aid. So that I will say this, in this little conversation that we've been having, which has been a couple hours, which has been blowing by, I would say you're well on your way to your goal. You're well on your way to planting roots, because that's what I wanted to be here in Texas. Like, At one point in time, I told myself, I was like, I want to be known as Mr. Rock Climbing of Texas. Like, if you think of Texas rock climbing, you think of me. And people might wonder why that is. And it's, you know, it's not for fame. It's not for fortune. It's for influence. It's for legitimate influence. So I can, once again, protect, preserve, and keep these places that we like to go and make sure they're there. I want the influence to be able to walk into counties and towns that have amazing access to rock climbing and have amazing things. And these, like, you know, these towns like Joe's Valley that are in Texas that are slowly dying because kids are moving and people aren't coming back, but they have access to, they probably have some of the world's greatest mountain biking and some of the world's greatest climbing and some of the world's greatest trail running. And they could have all these great events and all these things here. Like, that's the reason why I want this. And it involves me building roots. It involves me building community. And, you know, I see your vision and I see it because it's like much in one and the same. Like, in a lot of ways, we're kindred spirits in that way. I do. We're going to have a future conversation. This is just how it needs to roll. But you are shooting the IFSC World Cup tomorrow. Today.
Youth Worlds. Yeah.
Youth Worlds.
Today. It is currently 1:00.
It is 1:12.
Today is the beginning of speed qualifiers.
Yeah. So thank God. It will be, I have no idea what that's going to be for you, but I know what it's going to be for me. Because I'm going to still be coaching kids and they're going to be running around in a different gym today. But that's not important. What's important right now is how can people find you, support you, get in touch with you? Or if you want to remain an anonymous ghost, you're more than welcome to do that. It's your life. You can live it the best way you want. But if people do want to get in touch with you, if they do want to support you, or they do want to get in touch with the SEC and support the SEC, how do they do that?
We live in a digital age where we have access to information and content in a variety of ways. I would say the easiest and selfishly the way that I will respond fastest is Instagram. So my Instagram is Caleb Timmerman Photo. I don't have a personal Instagram. I only have my photography and I also have a wedding photography page. And then I also have the SEC page. So the SEC is SE Climbers is our Instagram.
Okay.
So that's social media, but you can also find us. I have a website, calebtimmermanphoto.com. The SEC website is seclimbers.org. I had a friend who told me long ago, never doubt the power of a casual email. And I have taken that to heart and want to extend that invitation to others as well. Like, if you have a question, if you have a thought, if you have a conversation that you want to have, reach out, talk, ask a question. And that's true for anyone, because we mentioned this earlier in the climbing industry stage that we're at now. There's a really solid chance that we are 1, maybe 2 degrees of separation away from someone that we want to be connecting with and want to be learning from or want to be having a conversation with. So shamelessly reach out, be honest about what you want to chat about or what you want to share. I serendipitously ran into, blanking on her name.
Here in Dallas?
Here in Texas. Not Brooke Rabbitoo. Strong climber. She's really known for recovering from injuries.
That does not narrow it down.
Oh, what's her name? Crap, I have to remember this. This is what you did earlier. Give me 5 seconds. 5, 4,
athlete,
3,
parent, adult, coach,
athlete.
Ooh,
really strong.
That does not narrow it down.
Doesn't narrow it down either.
Like, we're literally at the World Cup.
Yeah. Gosh, what is her name? Crap.
I don't know. I wish I could help you there, but I haven't been at the event.
Yeah.
What team? USA?
No, she's older. She's an older climber, probably around our age. Crap.
Local or from here?
She's visiting family. I think she lives in Colorado.
I mean, as all do.
Yeah.
But family lives here?
Yep.
Alex?
Puccio.
Alex.
Nailed it.
Yeah, I was about to say. As soon as you said family here, I was like, you're talking about Alex.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to circle back. Had a very serendipitous conversation with Alex Puccio because she's here for Youth Worlds. And I just saw her from across the way and I was like, oh my God, that's Alex Puccio. And I had that moment where I was like, I could either just like not engage or I could approach and have a conversation with this person that I've looked up to for years and been inspired by. And so I just did that. I went up and I said, hey, Alex, I'm Caleb. And she's like, oh my God, it's so nice to meet you. She was just very kind, very approachable. And I told her, I was like, hey, like I broke my leg 9 months ago. And honestly, you've been one of the most inspirational people as I've been recovering and healing because you have a tenacity in recovering and getting strong again that is really inspirational to me. So I tell that story to say, I think it's really important for people to not be afraid of reaching out and taking an opportunity to communicate, whether it's Instagram, whether it's a phone call, whether it's an email, just reach out to people who you're inspired by, whether that's me or you, Mario, or Alex Puccio or Jeremy Collins or Alex Honnold. The list goes on. Yeah, there's a lot of inspirational humans out there, and we get stronger as a community and as a collective when we engage actively with people that inspire us.
I would agree. I would agree wholeheartedly. And I think it's one of those things like you never know too. You never know. Like, like with my podcast too, people are always like, how do you get the guests that you do? It's like, I just ask people. And like some people like literally have been like, oh, I didn't realize you messaged me like a year ago. I'd love to be. I'm like, sure. Okay. I'm like, I'm psyched. When are you going to be in Dallas? Or when are you going to be here? Or, or we'll do it remotely. But I 100% agree with you. It's like, you have no idea. And most people will be accessible in some way, shape, or form. So that's it. Well, sir, we both have a day tomorrow. I am happy that we could share dinner, share mezcal, and create beautiful memories.
This has been a delight. Thank you for having me.
We'll do it next time. It's too late. We'll ask these. I keep on like thinking these. Yeah. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys are beautiful. Good night.
Cheers.
Or good morning.
I do this all the time. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Caleb. I cannot stop smiling from ear to ear. And it was a blessing. It was a homie. It was a friend. And I'm happy you got to be a fly on the wall in my journey in making friendships. If you haven't already, please like, follow, subscribe to this podcast, leave a comment, because if it touched you as much as it touched me and tickled me, I think it's worth saying. And we're on Patreon. We share more stories like this and things that we're doing there. So catch us out. But I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, if you're not suffering, are you even sending it all?
Audio.